Right now, as you read this, your body is quietly rebuilding itself. Millions of your cells are dividing, replacing worn-out tissue, patching up damage, and clearing away waste. In a very real sense, most of you is younger than you are. The lining of your gut is only days old. Your skin renews itself over weeks. Even your skeleton is slowly swapped out, atom by atom, over the course of years. And yet, despite all this constant renewal, you are getting older. Your skin will thin and wrinkle, your muscles will weaken, your memory will slow. Your risk of almost every major disease will climb year after year, until eventually the whole system fails. So here is the strange, uncomfortable question at the heart of all biology. If your body can repair and rebuild itself this well, why does it not just keep going forever? Why do we age at all? You might expect that after centuries of medicine, we would have a clean, simple answer. We do not, and that is the first honest thing to say. There is no single cause of aging. There is no one broken gear, no master clock ticking down to zero, no lever we can find and simply switch off. Instead, aging looks like many different systems in the body slowly drifting out of tune at the same time, each one nudging the others, until the whole orchestra falls apart. Scientists who study this have stopped looking for the single cause. Instead, they talk about the hallmarks of aging, a list of distinct processes that all pile up as the years go by. Not one villain, but a whole gang of them. Let's meet them, one at a time, because each one is stranger than the last. Start with the ends of your chromosomes. Deep inside almost every cell, your DNA is coiled into long strands called chromosomes, and the tips of those strands are capped by something called a telomere. Think of the little plastic sleeve on the end of a shoelace that stops it from fraying. That is what a telomere does for your DNA. But here is the catch. Every time a cell divides to make a copy of itself, it cannot quite copy all the way to the very tip. A little bit of telomere is lost each time. Snip, snip, snip with every division. For a while this does not matter because the caps are long and there is plenty to spare. But over decades of dividing, the telomeres get shorter and shorter until they reach a critical point. When the cap gets too short, the cell senses danger. It knows that if it keeps dividing, it will start damaging the precious genetic code underneath. So it stops. It refuses to divide again. This built-in limit on how many times a cell can copy itself was one of the first real clues that aging is written into our very cells. It is a kind of counter quietly ticking down inside you. But telomeres are only the beginning. Now think about the DNA itself, the actual instruction book of life. Every single day, the DNA inside your cells takes an astonishing amount of punishment. Ultraviolet light from the sun, chemicals in food and air, and even the ordinary business of turning food into energy all leave tiny chemical scars on your genetic code. Your cells are not helpless against this. They come equipped with a whole fleet of microscopic repair crews, molecular machines whose only job is to patrol the DNA, spot the damage, and fix it. They are astonishingly good, but they are not perfect. Every so often, a bit of damage slips through unrepaired or gets patched up slightly wrong. On any given day, it is nothing, but you are not living a single day. You are living tens of thousands of them, and across a whole lifetime, these tiny, uncorrected errors slowly accumulate, like typos creeping into a book that is copied over and over. Bit by bit, the instructions get a little more garbled, and the cells that rely on them start to misbehave. The damage does not just sit there quietly either, which brings us to one of the eeriest hallmarks of all. When a cell takes too much damage or its telomeres run out, it faces a choice. Sometimes it simply dies, cleanly and quietly, which is actually the healthy outcome. But sometimes it does something else. It stops dividing, but it refuses to die. It just sits there, alive but useless, in a state scientists call senescence. Researchers have a nickname for these cells: zombie cells. And they are not harmless. A senescent cell does not just sit quietly in the corner. It leaks out a steady stream of inflammatory chemical signals, a toxic cloud that irritates and damages the healthy cells around it. Worse, these signals can push nearby cells into becoming zombies too. A few of them are no big deal, and when you are young, your body clears them out efficiently. But as you age, they build up faster than your body can remove them, festering in your tissues, quietly poisoning their neighborhoods. Many scientists now believe that clearing out these zombie cells could be one of the most promising ways to slow aging. And we will come back to that. Next, follow the energy. Inside almost every one of your cells are tiny structures called mitochondria, the power plants of the body. They take the food you eat and the oxygen you breathe and turn them into clean, usable energy. You have trillions of them humming away every second of your life. But running a power plant is dirty work. As mitochondria generate energy, they also throw off unstable molecules as a kind of exhaust. Over time, this exhaust damages the mitochondria themselves, and they slowly become less efficient. An older mitochondrion produces less energy and more mess. And since some of your most demanding tissues, your brain, your heart, your muscles, are utterly dependent on a steady flood of energy, a slow decline in your power plants shows up as exactly the kind of fatigue and weakening we associate with getting old. Then there is the problem of running out of spare parts. Scattered throughout your body are special reserve cells called stem cells. These are the repair kit. When tissue gets damaged or worn out, stem cells step in, divide, and produce fresh replacement cells. They are why a cut heals, why your blood is constantly renewed, why your body can rebuild itself at all. But your supply of stem cells is not infinite, and over a lifetime, this reserve slowly empties. The stem cells become fewer, and the ones that remain grow sluggish and less effective. So when damage happens in an older body, the repair crews are thinner on the ground and slower to respond. Wounds heal more slowly. Tissues rebuild less completely. The body's ability to fix itself, which felt limitless when you were young, quietly runs down. Now consider the sheer clutter. Your cells are full of proteins, the tiny molecular machines that do almost all the work of life. For a protein to function, it has to be folded into exactly the right three-dimensional shape. When it folds correctly, it works. When it folds wrong, it becomes useless junk, and sometimes worse than junk, because misfolded proteins can clump together into sticky, toxic tangles. A young cell has an excellent cleaning service, systems that constantly find damaged proteins, break them down, and recycle the parts. But as you age, this quality control system slows down and gets overwhelmed. Misfolded proteins start to pile up and clump together inside and around the cells. This accumulation of protein junk is a feature of aging throughout the body, and in the brain in particular. These clumps are closely linked to some of the most feared diseases of old age. There is also a subtler kind of change, one that does not touch the DNA code at all, but changes how it is read. Your genome is like a vast library of instructions, and not every instruction should be active in every cell at every moment. A liver cell and a brain cell carry the exact same DNA, but they read completely different pages of it. On top of your DNA sits a second layer of chemical tags and marks that decide which genes get switched on and which get switched off. Scientists call this the epigenome. As you age, this pattern of switches slowly drifts. Genes that should be quiet get switched on. Genes that should be active fall silent. The cell gradually forgets its own precise identity and starts running the wrong programs. Remarkably, these epigenetic changes are so predictable that scientists can now read them like the rings of a tree, estimating a person's age just by looking at the pattern of chemical marks on their DNA. And weaving through all of this is a slow, smoldering fire. As the years pass, the body settles into a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation. Inflammation, in short bursts, is a good thing. It is your immune system rushing to fight infection or heal a wound. But it is meant to flare up and then switch off. In aging, it never fully switches off. All those zombie cells leaking their toxic signals, all that accumulated damage and junk keeps the immune system permanently, gently agitated. Scientists have given this a name that captures it perfectly: inflammaging. A constant, quiet inflammation that corrodes tissues from the inside and helps drive nearly every major age-related disease, from heart disease to arthritis to dementia. So that is the toolkit of aging. Wearing telomeres, accumulating DNA damage, zombie cells, failing power plants, emptying repair reserves, clumping proteins, drifting epigenetic switches, smoldering inflammation. Not one cause, but a tangled web of them, all feeding into one another. But this raises an even deeper question, one that goes beyond the how and asks the why. Why would evolution, which is so ruthlessly good at building creatures that survive, allow all of this to happen in the first place? Why did it not simply build us to repair ourselves perfectly, forever? The answer is both humbling and strangely clarifying. Evolution does not actually care whether you grow old. It cares whether you pass on your genes. And here is the brutal logic. Natural selection acts most powerfully on the young, on individuals who have not yet reproduced. A gene that causes a fatal problem in childhood will be strongly weeded out because its owner dies before having offspring. But a gene that causes problems only in old age, long after you have already had children, is almost invisible to natural selection. By the time it does its damage, the genes have already been passed on. Selection has, in a sense, stopped watching. This leads to a theory with a wonderfully bleak name, the disposable soma theory. Soma just means the body. The idea is that your body is essentially a temporary vessel, a disposable carrier whose real job is to protect and pass on the genes inside it. Every organism has a limited budget of energy, and it must split that energy between two competing tasks: reproduction and self-repair. Pour everything into flawless repair, and you might live longer, but you would have less energy for reproduction, and in the harsh world of nature you would likely be eaten or starve before that perfect maintenance ever paid off. So evolution strikes a bargain. It invests just enough in repair to keep the body running well through its reproductive years and no more. Aging, in this view, is not a flaw or an accident. It is the price of that trade-off, the natural consequence of a body optimized to reproduce rather than to last. There is a related idea with an equally memorable name, antagonistic pleiotropy, which simply means that a single gene can have opposite effects at different times of life. A gene that gives you a powerful advantage when you are young, say strong bones or vigorous cell growth, might come with a hidden cost that only shows up decades later. Because the early benefit helps you reproduce, evolution keeps the gene and cheerfully ignores the late life bill it leaves behind. Now, if aging were a fixed, unbreakable law of biology, that would be the end of the story. But here is the twist that keeps scientists up at night. It is not. Look around the animal kingdom and you find creatures that seem to break the rules. Take the naked mole rat, a wrinkled, nearly blind rodent that lives underground in Africa. By rodent standards, it should live a few short years, like a mouse. Instead, it can live past 30, and for most of that long life, it barely seems to age at all. Its risk of dying does not climb steadily with the years the way ours does. It is astonishingly resistant to cancer, and its cells appear to handle damage and protein junk far better than ours do. Or consider certain tortoises, which can live well past a century, still laying eggs and showing few signs of the decline we take for granted. Some of these animals display what biologists call negligible senescence, meaning that as they get older, their chance of dying barely increases at all. And then there is the hydra, a tiny freshwater creature just a few millimeters long, made largely of stem cells that it renews constantly. Under the right conditions, a hydra shows almost no signs of aging whatsoever, seemingly able to rebuild itself indefinitely. These animals do not have magic. They have biology, the same basic toolkit of cells and genes and repair systems that we do. They have simply struck the balance in a different place, investing far more heavily in maintenance and repair. And that is the crucial, hopeful lesson hidden inside them. Aging is not an unbreakable law of the universe. It is a dial set differently in different creatures, and a dial can, in principle, be turned. This is exactly where the frontier of science now sits. Researchers are chasing several of those dials at once. Some are developing drugs called senolytics, designed to hunt down and destroy those toxic zombie cells, clearing them out of aging tissues to see whether the body grows healthier again. Early experiments in animals have been genuinely encouraging. Others are exploring ways to partially reset the epigenetic marks on our DNA, effectively persuading old cells to read their instructions the way young cells do, winding back their apparent age. Still others focus on the mitochondria, the stem cells, the protein-clearing systems, each a possible point of intervention. But this is where honesty matters most. We have to be careful and clear-eyed here. Almost all of this is still early, unproven science. What works in a mouse or in cells in a dish very often fails in a human being. There is no pill that reverses aging. There is no confirmed fountain of youth waiting just around the corner. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. What there is real, serious, exciting research into a question we are only just beginning to understand. And that is perhaps the most important thing to take away. Aging is not a solved problem with a hidden answer that someone is keeping from you. It is a live, active, unfinished frontier of science, a genuine mystery that some of the sharpest minds on the planet are working on right now. We know a great deal about the how, the many tangled processes that pile up and wear us down. We have powerful theories about the why, rooted in the cold arithmetic of evolution. But we do not have a single, tidy answer, and we cannot yet stop it. What we have instead is something quieter, and in its own way more valuable. A clearer view of what is really happening inside us as the years pass. The wearing caps on our chromosomes, the accumulating scars in our DNA, the zombie cells and the failing power plants, the slow drift of the switches that make us who we are. Not a curse and not a punishment. Just the deep, intricate cost of being a living thing built to carry life forward for a while and then to make way. So the next time you catch sight of a grey hair or feel the slight ache of a longer day, remember what is actually going on beneath the surface. It is not simple. It is not a single clock running down. It is the most complex machine we know of, quietly negotiating an ancient trade-off written into life itself. And here is what we want to know from you. Of everything we have talked about, which idea surprised you most? The zombie cells festering in our tissues, the shoelace caps ticking down on our chromosomes, or the tortoise that barely ages at all? Tell us in the comments. And if this changed the way you think about growing older, stay with us. Because the story of your own body is stranger and far more remarkable than almost anything you were ever taught.